Well, everyone get seated. I mean, I'm back. Oh.
People just hanging out.
Yeah, that's what I'd do if I was just hanging out in town.
I said 10 minutes, I've given you 11.
You're so nice. 11.
Yes, some people
One extra
do.
minute.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go. I'm going to go ahead and call the City Council meeting back to order. On the first item of new business, number 1, RZN 12-4024, 1934 East Huntsville Road styles. An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4024 for approximately 0.4 acres located at 1934 East Huntsville Road from RSF4 residential single family 4 units per acre to NS Neighborhood Services.
Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby changes the zone classification of the following described property from RSF4 residential single family 4 units per acre to neighborhood services as shown on exhibits A and B attached hereto and made a part hereof. Section 2, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends the official zoning map of the City of Fayetteville to reflect the zoning change provided in Section 1.
Jeremy.
4-acre tract off of Huntsville Road is purchased in 1972 by the current applicants, converted to a catering business with approval of the planning commission by a conditional use permit. In 1985, it was changed to an antique shop. It was zoned for at the time, and that's what it's currently zoned. The conditional use at the time was allowed for an antique shop, and that's really the antique shop and the buildings that are on the property have remained relatively unchanged since that time. Recently, the applicant submitted a building permit and inquired about construction of a 32 by 12 foot storage building on the north side of the property, really behind the existing structures. We were unable to process that permit, however, because it would be an expansion to the existing use, which is only allowed generally by conditional use permit. However, in the last couple of years, the council changed those ordinances to not allow conditional use permits for antique shops, but rather to have more of a neighborhood services type zoning district. And we adopted those with the form-based codes a couple of years ago. That is located within Use Unit 15, Neighborhood Shopping Goods, and that would be a district that Neighborhood Services, which is the request, would support. Staff is recommending in favor of the Neighborhood Services District. The Planning Commission also recommended 9-0, and I don't believe there was any public comment or opposition to this request. We feel like this is a good location for this type of zoning district based on the future land use plan, and we are supportive of the request.
What questions do we have to council on this? Anything? Brenda?
I don't have any questions, just, well, yes, it is a question. There were no comments, or you've not heard any objections to this by the neighbors?
I've not seen any submitted public comments at all with this particular request.
Okay, well, I'd move it. Well, I know we need to listen to the public.
Yeah, Bobby?
I'll just second what she's going to do after the public.
Whatever it is, he's seconding.
I don't know, but this is looking relatively promising. Do we?
I'm officially declaring myself a maverick on the tabling issues in the future.
I like the daily disturber thing myself. Daily disturber. That was really good. What public comment do we have? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. We have a motion and a second to go to the second reading, correct?
Well, I guess, are you making that Alderman Boudreaux?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I thought you already had.
Yes. There's a motion to go to the second.
I just got the second first, didn't I? Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Boudreaux.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Petty.
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4024 for approximately 4/10 of an acre located at 1934 East Huntsville Road from residential single family 4 units per acre to neighborhood services.
We'll suspend the rules and go third.
Second.
A motion second to go to the third and final reading. Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Farrell.
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 12-4024 for approximately 4/10 of an acre located at 1934 East Huntsville Road from residential single-family 4 units per acre to neighborhood services.
Any final comments from the council on this?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to say that I'm delighted that we're doing this. I tell you, this is one of my favorite places in town to shop. I can kill 3 or 4 hours any day of the week. Great place.
Very true. Anything else? Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Carroll,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Number 2, amend 114.03 First Thursday Federal. An ordinance to amend 114.03 First Thursday Federal to close all streets around the square from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. during First Thursday and to give control of all parking around the square, both inside and outside, to the Fayetteville Convention and Visitors Bureau during First Thursday. Kit?
Whereas the Fayetteville Convention and Visitors Bureau and the city administration recommend that all vehicles be prohibited from using all streets around the square from 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. on the first Thursday of every month from April through November. And whereas the Fayetteville Convention and Visitors Bureau and the city administration recommend that the Fayetteville Convention and Visitors Bureau be given exclusive control over all parking places around the square to include both inside and outside parking spaces. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends Section 114.03 First Thursday Fayetteville, subsection B, location, parking restrictions, and administration, by repealing this subsection and enacting a replacement subsection B as shown below. Subsection B, location, parking restrictions, and administration. First Thursday Fayetteville shall be located and have control over the public parking spaces along both sides of East Avenue between Mountain Street and Center Street, along both sides of Center Street between East Avenue and Block Avenue, along both sides of Block Avenue between Center Street and Mountain Street, and along both sides of Mountain Street between East Avenue and Block Street during its hours of operation. The Fayetteville Convention and Visitors Bureau shall administer First Thursday Fayetteville and is authorized to remove or to request the ticketing of vehicles parked within the allocated areas on East Avenue, Center Street, Block Avenue, and Mountain Street between 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. on the days of the event. The Bureau is further authorized to close East Avenue between Mountain Street and Center Street, Center Street between East Avenue and Block Avenue, Block Avenue between Center Street and Mountain Street, and Mountain Street between East Avenue and Block Street to vehicular traffic during the First Thursday Fayetteville event.
Linsley.
I was going to go into a speech about nice oratory about how wonderful this festival is for our local economy, for our arts, but I think you already know that, so it's in the time. It is straight up, as Mr. Williams has stated and as the mayor has stated. You already have 2 streets that are under the control of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I think they have done an excellent job. I think people have seen that, how they are working with the parking, working with the traffic. What this would do, it would be the same times, the 4 to 10, which is already in the ordinance. Everything in the ordinance would be the same. It adds 2 more streets. So it makes it circled all around the square. I will tell you, I have heard just positive statements. I know this has been online, it's been before the council, it's been out there, and I know of no known opposition to this. I've just heard some good solid support. I did ask questions again today to Mr. Tanner Montgomery, Julie McQuaid in our office, who's also worked in this, and we know of no opposition. There have been questions made to the business owners around there. I know that's been a concern before, and I think the Convention and Visitors Bureau has done a wonderful job in terms of getting them a specific letter and having them actually write that, and you also have that in your packet. This is a time-sensitive issue. I know it takes 31 days in order for an ordinance to pass. First Thursday goes from April until November, so we're pretty much at that mark. So if possible, if I may ask that you also consider taking it to a 3rd reading tonight.
What
And I have
question?
Mr. Tanner Montgomery here, who's from the Convention Visitors Bureau, who was the point person on this project.
What questions do we have in the council? Anything?
I would ask that, Tanner, if you might tell just briefly, I know you said you had a little survey that we briefly describe your process for finding out the perspective of the businesses around?
Yes, ma'am. Pretty much what I did, and I asked Julie for maybe a little bit better list of everybody who owned property and everybody who had a business around the square. And she said that she had once gotten it from Brian Bailey, who was my predecessor from the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And so I just took it upon myself to take it around to everybody that I knew that was physically on the square and around the square in each level of each building that would be affected by this. And pretty much like we said, everybody was nothing but supportive of it. And so I tried to get as many signatures as I could and got a couple of emails here and there, but mainly just verbal support.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. And so,
Move we suspend the rules and go to the second reading.
Second.
we have a motion second to go to the second reading. Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tenet.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend section 114.03, First Thursday Fayetteville, to close all streets around the square from 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. during First Thursday, and to give control of all parking around the square, both inside and outside, to the Fayetteville Convention and Visitors Bureau during First Thursday.
I would move we would go to the third and final reading.
Second.
We have a motion second to go to third and final reading. Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tenet.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend section 114.03, First Thursday Fayetteville, to close all streets around the square from 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. during First Thursday, and to give control of all parking around the square, both inside and outside, to the Fayetteville Convention and Visitors Bureau during First Thursday.
Any final comments from the council on this? Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tenet.
Yes.
Thank you, council. All right, number 3, bid number 12-15, B&A Property Maintenance Resolution awarding bid number 12-15, authorized contract with B&A Property Maintenance and a total amount of $225,713 for the maintenance of trees and approving a 5% project contingency. Allison.
This is a request for approval of a contract with B&A Property Maintenance for the maintenance of trees, newly planted trees and street rights-of-way. The project is funded through tree escrow funds, and it's a maximum of 3-year contract, and it will include water, mulching, weed control, and any necessary pruning.
What questions do we have? Matthew?
Thank you. I had a couple of questions, which is why we didn't put this on consent, and I corresponded with Ms. Jumper about them. And my concerns were, this is the first contract of this nature that we've ever had, and it's a 3-year contract. And so I was just concerned kind of about our oversight of the group we were hiring, and so I was wondering if you would just kind of recant your answers to the rest of the council.
Sure, yeah. I was asked how we would be monitoring this contract, and responded that it will be a team approach because there are so many trees and it spans 3 years. We have maintenance crews in the field every day. They are very good to let us know if they see things that are amiss. We will inspect each tree at least twice a year because they will be mulching in May and November, doing weed control, so we will follow up after those months for those items. They will also be, the contractor themselves will be inspecting for damage, insects, disease, things like that, and are required to let us know if they notice anything so that we can have our arborists go out there and confirm that there might be an issue out there. So I think that was
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Bob?
Yes,
I'd really like the idea it's being funded by the tree escrow funds. My question is, as we go forward with this, and there are other, or say we let other contracts, is the if that becomes necessary, is the tree escrow fund growing at a satisfactory rate to be able to fund these things as we go forward?
It has decreased over the last few years because it is development driven. So we're seeing a drop off in those funds, and those funds were required to be expended within 7 years from when they're received. So we're planning on a year ahead, we're spending those funds. So after 2013, we see a pretty significant decrease in the funding.
So could we infer from that there won't be as many contracts when there's not as much money available?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor, to be clear on that, I think that the contracts relate to the 3-year period of care. So without development and the planting of trees to care for 3 years, we wouldn't have a need for the maintenance. So it's kind of development funded, but also development need driven.
Change the reason.
And Mr. Mayor, I did request that we actually do a contract like this, and so that we would have an accurate way to determine when we require a developer to pay into the tree escrow account, what would be the fair amount for the maintenance costs. We had not really had an independent contract like this, so we were trying to guess, and I figured that was probably better not to guess, that we ought to levy a contract out and see what the actual costs were to the city.
Any other questions? Is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
I move we pass the resolution, Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass the resolution. Any final comments? Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Farrell,
Yes.
Adams,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Okay, number 4, employee compensation adjustment. Resolution to approve a budget adjustment of $1,154,000 to fund citywide 2012 employee compensation adjustment. Paul?
As the council will remember, when we began the budget process in September, salary increases were not included in the budget at that point in time. Remember, when we do begin to formulate the budget, we're going on estimates for revenue and estimates for expenditures because we don't know how the rest of the year is going to play out. We begin in September, and remember, we're looking at receipts through July, so we're only seeing half a year's activity at that point in time. So we do the best we can to estimate at that point in time, but we don't know where we're going to end up. Based on that information, the mayor indicated that we were not going to include compensation in the package at that point in time, in the budget package, and then we're going to look at it. He was going to look at it when the year-end results came in. And remember, the year-end results, the final revenue numbers for sales tax, which is our biggest generator of revenue in the general fund, we don't get until February. So that's why we're coming forward at this point in time.
Does everybody remember those discussions during the budget when we talked about it? So we'll make sure everybody's clear on that. All right, go ahead. So we talked a little before about this. This is how the general fund ended up. We had revenues of $36 million, expenses of $34, giving us a raw surplus of $2 million. Some of that surplus has to go to fund rebudgets into next year. Those are projects carried on into the 2012 budget for which we have funding. So the net surplus is about $1.4 million at this point in time. That's how we ended up in 2011. When we analyze a surplus, which we need to do and find out where it came from, is it due to expenditure reduction, is it due to revenue increases, which is very important if we're going to add anything. It was pretty well split. $714,000 were due to revenue increases, and $649,000 was due to expenditure reductions. So it was pretty even. If you remember last year, we had a surplus of about $2 million, and that was all because of expenditure reductions. So that means it's one-timer. Expenditure reductions are one-timers. Revenue increases continue in the future, at least hopefully.
The mayor's compensation plan and his guiding philosophy. First, it's going to recommend ongoing funding without risk of future layoffs. So number one priority in the mayor's proposal is to secure the jobs we have now. Address market pay for existing positions before any consideration of any new positions. Employees with at least 6 months of service to the city may qualify for an appropriate increase in compensation. Now that's the philosophy behind his proposal. The actual proposal would provide for step increases to uniformed employees beginning 3/19/2012. Uniformed employees obviously are police and fire, uniformed people, and they're on a step program. The merit, it would provide a commensurate amount of funding for the merit employees, and that would be determined on merit, on their performance. It would also include wages or amounts for those employees who may be topped at the top of their range in the form of some type of discretionary compensation. So it would be comprehensive. To be eligible, employees would have to be here at least 6 months as of 3/31/2012. Sworn personnel, however, would have to complete 1 year, and that's because they're in a SEP program. And you can't prorate anything when you're on a STEP program. You get out of sync. The 2012 cost of the plan is projected to be $764,000 in 2012, $1,154,000 citywide. That's for all funds. The ongoing costs, $993,000 in the future years for the general fund, $1.5 million for all funds. Now we have to answer two questions. When you're going to go in and you're going to add a recurring cost, which is a salary increase which is going to go out in the future, not just a bonus or a service award, you're going to say how we're going to fund it the current year, how we're going to fund it in future years. If we look at 2012 and our performance from 2011 coming into 2012, we've had a surplus of about $1.4 million. Now, the $764,000 worth of revenue revenue surplus minus that subtracted from $500,000 would mean that we would have sufficient funds from that surplus to fund both what we had projected that we might take out of reserves in 2012 plus what the compensation program would cost us. So 2012 could be paid for from that surplus that was accumulated in 2011. Would handle the compensation plus the potential reserve hit that we talked about to fund the program in 2012. If we look at and we analyze the revenues that we actually collected in 2011, and we analyze those and say, how did we do compared to what our estimate was? In other words, what is the estimate which 2012 was based on? And I'll look at sales tax, franchise fees, property taxes, and CMRS reimbursements. Those are 911 reimbursements. We actually collected $458,000 more than I had forecasted and more than we had predicated the 2012 budget on. Had we known then what we know now, we could have forecasted the collection of an additional $458,000 and reasonably expected to get that in 2012 if everything was flat. Again, we don't know that when we're analyzing things back in September and October when we're really doing the budget work, but that's how we ended up. So we have a reasonable expectation that we could collect an additional $458,000 worth of revenue higher than what we predicated the actual budget on. If we look at the sales tax for December, and December is period 1 of the 2012 budget, and this is one of the reasons the mayor said we're going to wait till the end of February to do the analysis, because we want to see what is the trend. What's the bellwether showing us going forward for 2012 for sales tax? which is a key indicator, was up 2.25%. If we extended that and we extrapolate, we say if that carries on to the end of the year, we could gain another $466,000 in sales tax. The combination of the two are $924,000, which about covers, going forward, what we would need to continue this program in future years. One thing you're going to have to concern yourself about, you don't want to put an ongoing expenditure if you can't fund it in future years. That's what we're looking at. Had we been projecting the budget back in September, if we'd have had this information, we could have reasonably expected this year to have a 2% increase in sales tax plus those additional $458,000 worth of revenues. But we didn't. We were conservative. We went on what we had at that time. Remember, October and November were banner months for sales tax. We did very, very well. But we have every reason to expect that if we at least stay flat, we can pay this in 2013 and going out in the future. So that's two very important things about the plan. We have enough to pay for 2012, and it appears we have enough going forward into the future to pay for those ongoing costs. I want to look at a little bit about the reserve position, because the reserve position is what your security is. That's our security blanket. You have to look at that, make sure you have sufficient reserves in case you have a downward dip or you have cash flow issues. If we look at the end of 2009, the mayor's first year in office, if we remember, we had a major decline in revenue that year. And we ended up with under $9 million in reserves. Remember, during that year, we saw the downtrend that had started in 2008, one of the worst recessions since the Great Depression. Mayor came forward, and with your approval, we implemented a plan to make some cuts, freeze some positions, etc., to kind of keep the reserve level in the best condition we could, but it did decline a bit. In 2010, last year, you can see it increased a bit. We're up about $10 million in those general fund reserves. Again, we stayed conservative in 2011, and those reserves increased and came in at the end of the year at 2011 at approximately $12 million. That's unadjusted. That'll be adjusted later when we finally close everything. But look at the difference in the reserve position between 2009 and 2011. It's up about $3 million. Now this is in the face of some of the worst economic times in my lifetime, and I'm all older than everybody else here. So these have been bad economic times, and I think we can all applaud ourselves, the council, the administration, for the job that's been done here. If we analyze the reserves and look at them at this point in time, we can see that we're going to end up with about $12 million this year. Now, we need $730,000 of that to fund the rebudgets I talked about before. That would leave us a fund balance of $11.4 million. If we take out our required 60-day reserves, that's about $5.6 million, would still leave us with a free reserve, what we've termed a free reserve, of $5.7 million. Now, that's pretty secure. We're in unstable times. None of us know what's going to happen in the future. If you listen to the experts, it's flat to down to sideways. Nobody knows. But that gives us a good reserve position going forward. So we feel that we can fund this compensation plan, have a good reserve going forward, and still have the 60-day reserve in case of emergency circumstances. What happens if we stay flat to what was expected in the 2012 budget? In other words, we don't get that $458,000, we don't get the 2%. What's going to happen and what's the reserve position going to look like? We look at that. Remember, we predicated this budget on $500,000 worth of reserves. So if we have to use that, we come down and we have $10 million. We would end the year with approximately $10 million. The required reserves, again, about $5.6 million. which would mean we would end up with $4.5 million worth of free reserves. So if everything stays flat to budget, okay, which what we budgeted in 2012, which is less than, okay, $458,000 less than we actually got last year. That's what our position would be, and we'd still have a pretty good safety position going forward. That is why, after we analyze this, that the mayor is recommending this package of increases in steps and merit to the employees.
Brenda,
Yes.
did you have a question?
I don't have a question. I wanted to make a statement.
Oh,
about
I'm
this.
sorry, I'm sorry.
But if we have questions, we can.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Paul, I'm sorry. I
Okay.
thought you had a question.
Well, this really winds up what I had. So, in other words, we've got to secure. We feel we have every reasonable expectation to believe that the revenues going forward will afford us the ability to continue this in the future, not having to go into reserves. And we also have a very, very solid reserve position if that doesn't come to pass. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Brenda?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a statement that, you know, these reserves are about the same numbers that we had whenever we came into office. And I think that's pretty commendable considering what we've gone through. And I think that the mayor's done a fantastic job of getting us back up to that position. And I feel like that the mayor and the help of the employees at maintaining the same service level that we had back in 2000 is all pretty incredible. And I think they certainly deserve compensation for the work they've done. And I'm very supportive of this, and was supportive whenever the mayor, you know, suggested that he would be bringing this forward if things still looked good, and they do. And you know, I feel like it's definitely something we need to do, so I'm very supportive of it.
Thank you, Brenda. Dale?
Well, I just was not sure I'd ever see this day come. I am so excited that we're finally here. And I must say that one of the things that makes me so happy to be on this council is the attitude of our city workers. During this time when we weren't able to give raises and they were doing, you know, more work because we had less people, I didn't hear whining and complaining. People were just marvelous attitudes, and I think that is certainly commendable. I commend our mayor and our chief of staff and Paul so very much for guiding us through this time. And I'm very supportive of this and glad that the day is finally here that we can give some compensation to our workers.
Thank you, Dale. Sarah?
Oh, I would just say that I remember too when the recession began and there was the plan that was presented and people were gonna buckle down and look at not rehiring positions. And I remember being in that room 326 and all of us saying, you know, when will we consider a compensation package? Where is that in the prioritization? And it was at the top. When things started to look better, that was going to be the first thing that would be brought forward. And so I want to also commend the administration and the staff for continuing to work hard on that, but then also following up on that, because I remember people being very supportive of, yes, keeping that as a priority as things began to look rosier as far as the budget was concerned. And I appreciate your presenting it. It makes sense as well. So thank you.
Jeff?
In the corporate world, I think any CEO that's worth his or her value would say the success of a company depends on their employees, and I think it's the same in a city. And I think one of the great strengths of this city, and one of the things that one of the many things that makes it great, is the attitude, just like Adela said, of the employees to do what they've done in the face of this sort of adversity, and to not complain about it and to do their jobs exceedingly well. So I'm very, very proud to be able to do this today, and I commend the mayor for being a man of his word. And from the day one that I've been on this council, this has been discussed, and so I'm proud of the moment, and I appreciate what the city staff has done.
Bob?
Paul, question on the part of the money that's been allocated for the merit employees, and you said they would be based on merit.
Yes.
Does all that money go to them? I mean, is it going to be divvied up among whatever they do? All the money's going to those merit employees to be divvied up?
Yeah, well, it'll be spread across, it'll be allocated based on merit.
Yeah,
Okay.
but so all of it, I'm just saying, if you didn't have a bunch of, it's all going to go to them.
Yes.
Okay, I was just saying, if
But
you
it'll
didn't have
be
enough star
distributed.
performers, which I'm sure we do,
Yeah.
that wouldn't sit there.
But it'll be distributed
Okay.
based on performance. Now, if there are,
This could be a banner day. I'd like to say a few things, and I don't want Don and Paul to jump on me until I get through. You know, there's a fiscal conservative on this council, and this fiscal conservative was kind of looking at the budget at the end of the year, and he was saying, you know, it might be a good idea. Our economy's looking better. Maybe we could bet on the come here and not go into reserves. You might recall this guy saying this. But we didn't do that. And this time around, we're looking at, you know, things did come out pretty good, or, you know, thank God. And I give the mayor and his administration credit for that. Mayor held the line. That didn't happen automatically. It seems that we are ready to bet on the come this time, and I'm not opposed to that. I was visiting with the mayor, and I have a question. Bearing in mind that the economy, and I think you referred to it, Paul, as flat prognostication. Mayor, if barring any kind of a catastrophe come along, which would change this, or some kind of a high court mandate where we had to spend money, how would you feel about assuring me that we wouldn't go into reserves in the 2013 budget?
Well, I think, Paul,
If we meet what
the expectations
yes,
are,
sir.
the only thing that I will tell you, and it's just like when I came into this office in 2009, we had a budget that there was no way we were going to hit that budget. It wasn't going to happen. So I did whatever I had to do to keep us afloat. But if we hit what Paul is projecting, I won't have to go into reserves. I won't have to.
Is that we won't go into reserves if we do that and we don't have any kind of a high court mandate or catastrophe?
I can agree to that, yes.
I like it. One more thing. I love it when I see Dominic up here dressed up in a coat tie. I think all the employees deserve the raise, Mayor, and I think you've kept it in the forefront. And I think, once again, you know, this didn't happen by accident. And I'm sure it wasn't easy to, when the people pulled together and worked, and I'm sure there are times when you thought there were positions that probably you should loosen up and you didn't. So I'm officially in.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Well, I see that the Daily Disturber is on. Anyway. Thank you, Bob. Anybody else?
Mayor, can I make a comment before you do yours? And that is, one, I want to thank the council, the mayor, the elected officials, Kit, Sandra, during this time. And I want to remind people that, you know, what we've been through, I think everyone's contributing in a very significant way. I think the council has in holding and protecting jobs and services to citizens at times when there was a lot of discussion about maybe having to look at something different. But just to put a few things into perspective, Society of Human Resource Management contracts Mercer, the largest compensation analyst in the world, to do studies of employers. U.S. employers, over the last 3-year period, gave increases in 2009 of 3.2%, 2.7 in 2010, 2.9 in 2011. That's the private employment world. And 13% of the firms froze salaries in the private world in that side. Even today, still 2% of them in 2012 have that scenario. If you look at Social Security, our senior citizens, in 2009, the increase was 5.8%, the largest increase in the history of Social Security. Nothing in 10, nothing in 11, and 3.6% in 2012. If you look at this 4-year period of the term that Mayor Jordan has been in office, we have examples of people being able to do increases who've maybe had more flexibility in cutting service, manufacturing lines, moving jobs, government services, etc. We were able to do the cuts that we did without a service reduction to our citizens, protecting every job that we had in the city. We froze jobs to the tune of about 23, the council's direction, but the management team, and many of them are here tonight, I want to applaud them because we did 32 additional jobs as an average of unfilled through attrition, length of time to fill them, to get additional savings to protect the jobs of the whole. Now, we had uniform services, overtime impacted. We had people doing more with less on the merit side. And a lot of sacrifices made. And not only did we do all this, but we did it cutting our expense budgets, not spending the expense budget that you approved on top of that, and putting more in the reserves over that 3-year period than when many of you took office. Now, I said this at agenda session, and I'm saying it because I wanted it in the record, that I think if people had said in 2009 that we would be in a position today to fund a full step implementation, a merit matrix that awarded performance in a paid period with a recession, maintaining our reserve level better than we did when you took office at the beginning of this 4-year term, I think we would be ecstatic. And so I'm saying that to you that I am ecstatic. I flew out last Wednesday to go to DCF agenda session because I don't think I could have taken hearing that, you know, where everyone was upset. And I know that people have read the papers, and that brings me to the last thing. And I want to say to you is that many of you have a long-standing history as aldermen. Some of you 2 and 3 years, some of you 8 years, 10 years, 12 years up here, and you see conditions change. And I don't think that anyone can take discussions in one point in time in a snapshot and say that those things aren't still priorities to you at a future period when conditions are different. Now, not only is the mayor a fantastic boss, he's a great friend. And I'm going to say to you that one thing that you've never had to question is about his integrity when it comes to managing employees. It is his #1 love. And for 3 years, I think Paul can vouch for this, all we've heard is the ability to award and retain our talent. And even in the budget discussions in 2008, when the mayor was talking about the use of reserves, in that budget, he did not recommend the removal of wages. In fact, the wages were implemented in January of 2009, and it was under his direction to freeze them to protect the jobs of everyone. So, you know, if you want to criticize him for protecting workers and protecting jobs, for rewarding high performers and allowing us to provide the best service without cutting services, I think that's a criticism he's willing to take. And as his staff, we're willing to take it on his behalf. I also want to thank Chief Tabor, Chief Dayringer, Lindsley, Terry, Paul, Jeremy, who am I missing? Connie, all of our senior management, Kit, Rudy, Sandra. I think they've done a phenomenal job, more than people realize. So I just wanted to say thank you, because I know and I'm sure you'll hear it from the mayor, but he's said it every day. And I want to thank the 8 of you, because Alderman Farrell's questions keep us on our toes. We don't make these decisions not knowing that we can't fund them moving forward. And, you know, people might think that the mayor doesn't, you know, I've heard everything in the world since I've been gone. He's doing it because it's an election year. He's doing it, you know, going into reserves. These are dollars that this staff saved. And he would have done it every year had we been able to fund it, because he believes that you should pay for the best and brightest talent to retain them, and that's how you get the best service. And the council passed a policy to be market leaders in pay. So I'm proud of the staff. I want to thank Paul and his finance team, because I think they've done a fantastic job of helping us do it. And every employee who contributed. So those are my comments as your chief of staff.
Thank you, Don.
Mayor, can I say one thing? Don, thanks for being patient with me. I know it's trying at times, but it ain't going to change.
That's why we love you,
Bobby. We know, Bobby. We know. All right. Is there any public comment from anybody? See, now I'll bring it back to the council. I think everything's been said. I think, you know, I've seen everything that's been written, but it don't matter. It really doesn't matter. You know, I took this job, and 3 weeks into this job, we had probably the worst natural disaster this city's ever seen, $6 million. It was, I don't know how to describe it. It was just, it was a nightmare. Really, it was. I wish I could describe it another way. The economy was dropping like a rock in a well. I did not know how we were going to make it. But we sat down and we said, we're going to make it. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get it done. Now, that wasn't easy. Because we went as an alderman, when I was an alderman, we were probably averaging about 5% a year increase. You know, Brenda, you remember, y'all been here a while. We used to try and figure out how to spend money. I mean, honestly, we would sit down and say, well, what are we doing, fund this or fund that? And we went from that to about a 5% average drop. The first 2 years, we averaged probably 5% in decline in sales tax dollars in the first 22 months I was in office. That's what we were looking at right there. So we pulled together as a staff, and Paul Becker and Don Marr and my department heads and my employees. I went to them and I said, we can't give raises, but we're going to, I guarantee you we're going to keep everybody their job. And I brought it to this council, and you all worked with me, and we did this together. It took the council, it took the staff, it took the administration. We worked and we went from $9 million to 12. Now, that may look relatively easy, but in the worst recession since the Depression, that's quite an accomplishment. I don't care what they write, I don't care what they say. You know, Lincoln had I've got a little sign in my office that says, Lincoln said one time, he said, they asked him if he was going to respond to what was written or said about him. He said, if I responded to everything that was written about me and said about me, this shop would be closed for any other business. I do the best I know how, and I'm going to keep on doing it till the end. And if the end brings me out all right, it doesn't make any difference what they've said or what they've written about me. We'll be okay, and I'll be okay. And if the end brings me out wrong, it doesn't make any difference if 10 angels from heaven swear that I was doing the right thing. Nobody's going to believe it. So, you know, we've made it. Doesn't matter what's written or what's said. At the end of the day, the decisions I've made, I would make them all over again. Because together, we've advanced this city. And it's been hard, but it's been good. Right, Paul? Don?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you all very much.
We gotta vote on it
Is
first.
there a motion?
Well, I gotta have a motion first.
Motion, I move that we pass the resolution.
Okay. Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Farrell,
Yes.
What?
Adams,
Yes.
Yes. Gray,
Yes.
Boudreaux,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Petty,
Yes.
Tennant.
Yes.
Thank you, council, for your support. Any announcements?
Yes. I'd like to bring up this ordinance review committee meeting and the possibility of having that Thursday, the 8th, this upcoming Thursday. No, I thought,
Next week.
well, that's what I asked you.
Next week, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, the 8th, this week, this coming Thursday. Day after tomorrow. Is that a possibility?
Today's the 6th, so Thursday would be the 8th.
There is an environmental action committee that evening, but room 326 is available if you want.
What time does the action committee start?
It's at 5:30.
5:30.
I'm traveling.
Well, you're on the, since Sarah's on the ordinance review committee, that would be a problem. So I guess then we'd put it off then to the next Thursday.
Can we take it offline because I'm out of town for.
So can we do what
We'll
with it?
take it offline, like figure out the date outside of this meeting for the ordinance review committee, or.
Well, I was hoping we could announce it tonight. Was the object.
So if it would need to be the week of the 19th.
Oh, we're talking 2 more weeks before we even have an ordinance review
But
meeting?
I would be supportive if the committee wanted to meet and discuss it. I'm supportive of that.
Okay, well, how about the other members? Are you available the next Thursday?
No.
No?
How about tomorrow? Wednesday?
Wednesday?
How about tonight?
I'm available on any Wednesday except for the one 2 weeks from now.
Wednesday's not great for me, but I can make it work. That's very short notice, though. That's tomorrow.
You're announcing it publicly here, though, live,
Is that enough
TV.
Right, so is, you're not available tomorrow night? Well, all right then, I guess we'll, that's a shame because we've tabled this, trying to, and if I can't even get a meeting put together for 2 weeks, that's unfortunate that we've done it
Brenda,
like
I'd call the
this.
meeting and go on with it.
Yeah, there's.
Well, if I don't have the committee members to make a recommendation for the
Well,
ordinance,
you need 3.
If you have a
Need
quorum,
3.
you do.
well, I need a quorum. Justin?
So what are you talking about? Tomorrow or Thursday?
Tomorrow or Thursday. Well, Matthew's not available tomorrow. Sarah's not
I'm
available
available
tomorrow.
tomorrow. I'm not available on Thursday.
How about you, Justin? Are you available tomorrow?
What time?
I guess 5?
Yeah, I can do it tomorrow, fine.
Okay. So we're gonna have an ordinance review. Have you got time to get all this? You've got it all put together. So tomorrow night, we'll have a meeting on this, the enforcement amendment to our existing ordinance about 3 or more family, all that, at 5 o'clock in room
111.
111.
Okay.
That's downstairs, the smaller room. Okay?
Okay.
Set, 5 o'clock. We'll see you then.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
And just a reminder, I was responsible for initiating the draft of this, and so I'm supportive of it.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Okay. Sounds good. All right.
I have an announcement. A Ward 4 resident, Louise Mann, is going to have a trash class on this Thursday night at 6 o'clock, and she asked me to let everybody know that.
And where's that going to be?
Chamber of Commerce, free and open to the public, March 8th.
And
6
there's
o'clock.
follow-up classes?
And then again on the 15th and again on the 22nd. Trash class. Okay?
Thank you. Okay.
Everybody good? Thank you all. We're adjourned.